What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of In the Heyday. My name is Oliver Hayes alongside Leopoldo Rivera. We're here at the CU Event Center a little bit after the Colorado Buffalo season opening 84-78 win over the Montana State Bobcats. Of course, 6-point game is not what the Buffs would have wanted against the Big Sky opponent. Never mind one that was picked to finish in the middle of the conference and has 10 incomers. Nevertheless, this was a 6-point ball game. It came down to the wire. It came down to Isaiah Johnson's 24-point performance, all of which came in the second half for the true freshman. Leo, what were some of your instant reactions from this game?
I mean, wow, this kid Isaiah Johnson's impressive all over Hayes. Not only can he shoot the ball, but he has the it factor. He has the clutch gene. He has that dog in him. And when it comes down to those clutch moments at the end of the game, when you need someone to go find a bucket, you need someone to be able to go to the stripe and knock down all their free throws, that's the Colorado Buffaloes guy.
Yeah, no, Isaiah came up huge down the stretch. Like I said, he had those 24 points in the second half, and a lot of that came at the line. He was able to draw contact. He got fouled 7 times, I believe. Converted 3 big free throws at one point where the Buffs trailed by 4 points late in this contest, down 74-70. So it was huge that he was able to make free throws on a night where the Buffs kind of struggled. They only made 27 of their 39 free throw attempts. But looking more at Isaiah himself, he was able to knock down multiple threes in front of his father, Chris Johnson, a renowned NBA trainer who brought along his close friend, NBA Hall of Famer Dwayne Wade. So a very special night for the true freshman. But looking at, I guess, before we get into the defense and what the Bobcats did, looking at some of the other things that happened on offense. Of course, Barrington Hargress joined the rotation this year from UC Riverside, who was a 20-point per game scorer a year ago. Sebastian Ranchik is looking to step up. Banggot Dax looking to step up. Those two dealt with injuries. There were some other returners, of course, or other freshmen alongside Isaiah. What did you see from the other guys outside of Isaiah Johnson?
Yeah, I really like Sebastian Ranchik tonight, Oliver Hayes. Obviously, he's dealing with that ankle injury, and it kind of looked like it was bothering him later down the stretch, being, on that baseline. I was kind of seeing him grabbing at it a little bit. He was picking it up, but I think just his ability to play, I think he played the most minutes tonight. That's, very good for the Colorado Buffaloes to see just his impact on the court, that leadership he's able to provide. And it's that consistency. He knows what Tad Boyle wants. He knows the expectation of this team, and he's able to kind of rally those guys.
Yeah, the shots weren't falling for him as much. He only went 3 of 9 from the field. But the big thing that stood out to me was the fact that he was another guy who was also able to get to the line, getting fouled 6 times.
Yeah.
He made 6 of his 7 free throws. So he was another guy who was able to hit his shots from the charity stripe, which stood out. But it was kind of an interesting night because he was the guy lined up across Patrick McMahon, who had 24 points for the Bobcats. So Sebi kind of had his hands full on both sides of the floor, which is something that we'll expect from him going forward as an athletic 6'11", two-way monster, for lack of a better word. So tonight was, a very good introduction for him as far as what kind of role he'll bring on. But looking at some of the other returners, looking at the interior guys, Banggot Dak and Elijah Malone, what did you see from them?
I think to kind of highlight some of the negative things first, I think Banggot definitely, was a little bullied tonight in the paint, for lack of better terms, Oliver Hayes. It seemed like when guys were ready to get that elbow in his chest and really get on the block and start driving, he kind of struggled a little bit, but he did have some key big blocks, and that's kind of what you want to see him build upon. He needs to have a little more energy and effort on that side of the ball, but again, dealing with this injury as the season continues to progress along and his offense comes along as well. He had the one big dunk, Oliver, but we'd like to see a little bit more out of him specifically. And then another one of the guys, Elijah Malone, did a really good job at the defensive end, as we talked about.
Yeah, Banggot, he, came out, scored 6 quick points, had that huge dunk, like you said. That was one of the best that he's had in his career, and he's had quite a few poster jams that have stood out. But I think the big thing from that play, at least, is that stands out to me is the fact that there's Barrington Hargress who can throw that ball, throw those alley-oop passes that weren't around last season that the Buffs were trying to capitalize on, but often turn to turnovers. But looking at BD, like you said, he was got pushed around a little bit with his knee injury. He didn't necessarily look sluggish, but there were times where he got beat off the dribble and looked like he was just kind of trying to feel himself out, at least physically. But you didn't talk about Elijah Malone as much, but he had 13 rebounds tonight. 13 rebounds, 10 points, so double-double. But eight of those rebounds were on the offensive side. Tad Boyle said that was the deciding factor in this game, not Isaiah Johnson's 24 points or anything else that happened. It was Elijah Malone's 8 offensive rebounds. Could you speak more on what he was able to do?
Most definitely. You got to give credit to the big man because it was a mentality thing, Oliver Hayes. He's really embraced his role as an enforcer this season. We saw in the offseason that Elijah Malone lost some weight. He really took it the full year with the D1 program seriously, and was able to really make some strides to his game, and it showed. His stamina kind of impressed me. Later down the stretch, he was still physical. He wasn't slowing down. He was still able to get up in and play some really quality defense, and it showed on the stat sheet with those rebounds. Those offensive rebounds were for him out efforting, the Montana State Bobcats, and it was really impressive to see from a guy that Tad Boyle has spoke so highly on and what he can provide to this team, especially on the defensive end.
Yeah, no, the Elijah, looked a lot more. He looked a lot better as far as his motor, as
Yes.
far as his hustle. Hustle. We've talked about how much leaner he is, and how he's built his confidence coming into more of a leadership role and playing 25 minutes tonight. There weren't times where I felt like he looked tired. If anything, he was coming alive as the game
Yeah.
came alive. Was able to come up with some big defensive plays against some interior players, which was huge. As the Bobcats shot over 50% from the field. And while they were able to cash from three, hitting 7 of their 20 attempts, it came down to Patrick McMahon's 24 points alongside some of the other interior players. But before we look at that, I want to talk about Barrington Hargis a little bit. I want to talk about some of the other freshmen on the offensive side of the ball. I guess looking at Hargis first, what did you see from him as far as his shots weren't falling as much, but what did you see from him as far as getting teammates involved?
Yeah, I think his passing ability is what really stood out, Oliver. You talked about that assist he had to bang on Dak, but it was a lot of feeds that, last year were getting turned over, for a lack of better terms. And Tad Boyle, like you said, mentioned that the consistency and the ability to maintain possession of the basketball is so key when you're not giving up those fast breaks and you're able to stop and set up your offense. And just the IQ. We saw him taking time out here later in the game when there was 1 minute left to kind of reset, get a play in, make sure Colorado had their best foot forward. And I think it's just little things like that and the leadership ability that are going to slowly start to stack. And once Hargris' shot falls, because it's going to start falling pretty soon, I think Colorado fans are going to have a lot to enjoy with him.
Yeah, and I was honestly just misremembering because looking at the stats, he was 5 of 11 from the field, and that's kind of what I remember better. Because what I was about to say is he was able to provide that off the dribble spark that the Buffs weren't able to have as much as a year ago, and that was huge because at the end of the shot clock, coming off of screens, he was able to hit some pull up shots, which provided a little bit of a spark, especially in that first half. And Isaiah
Yeah.
Johnson was able to carry that along in that second half when he got things going. But looking at some of the other freshmen, I know Ian Inman was a guy who didn't get to play as much, but Jalen Holland didn't, get to show as much as what he was able to in Australia and versus Grace. But Josiah Sanders, he got to the line a few times. He brought the energy. I know he had some of his, the hometown crowd behind him, in a sense. What did you see from those freshman guys?
I like Josiah Sanders a lot because he's a big body, Oliver Hayes. He plays physical, and it really shows when he's able to attack that rim and, use his strength a little bit and play off the dribble, like you said. That was pretty cool to see. And as for, some of the other freshmen you would have liked to see, a little more playing time, but like Tad said, when you're in this clutch situation, you got to go for the win, most importantly. But Holland's defense was pretty tremendous. Oliver Hayes, that was kind of the big thing. They had him picking up full court press, especially with Isaiah Johnson. It kind of seemed like Tad had both those guys tasked with trying to, provide more energy on the defensive end, of course, with Ranchik as well. But that's kind of what I saw from those guys.
Yeah, definitely. Those guys are looking to bring the defensive energy along with a guy like Felix Casares, who's a returner, along with another returner, and Andrew Crawford.
Yeah.
Guys who fit that same mold, who are athletic, who are in that 6'4" to 6'6" type of range, who can shoot the three, and with a guy like Josiah who can put the ball on the deck a little bit more and facilitate the offense, but also get downhill. He'll look to try and score the ball more and set up things. But
Yeah.
I know I've been kind of maybe I just don't want to talk about the defense because that was the stain on tonight's game. Bobcats shot over 50% from the field. Patrick Mann had 24 points. The interior guys had their way against the Buffs, specifically against Bangor Dak and Elijah Malone. But even the guard play from a guy like what's his name, Kevin Holden. I believe he transferred from the non-Division One level. When you look at the performances from the Bobcats, we talked a little about the defensive struggles, but what were some of the issues that the Buffs were struggling with that led to those woes?
I know Tad Boyle's talked about pace this whole offseason, so have you, Oliver Hayes, within the mentality of what Colorado wants to do. But it seemed like Montana kind of put that pace on them as well. They did a really good job of, attacking fast on their cuts early in the shot clock, getting the movement going, and just a lot of ability to pass around so they were able to find that open look. And then outside of when they had the open look, the contested shots was really impressive for Montana State. When you shoot over 50%, some of those are going to be a little bit of luck of the bounce there. And it seemed like anytime it was a 50-50 shot, it was going to fall in Montana's favor.
Yeah, part of it where the shots were falling from Montana State, but you look at the Buffs scrambling on some moments, especially when they turned the ball over a lot at the beginning of the second half.
Yeah.
They had less, sub 10 turnovers in this game, which was impressive. But when the ball started getting when they started turning the ball over at the beginning of the second half, more shots starting to fall. They weren't able to get out the shooters, and Tad Boyle said that they wanted to hold the Bobcats to fewer than 6 threes. They hit 7 a night on 20 attempts while having the interior
Yeah.
dominance that we talked about. So I mean, I guess we could talk about what the Buffs can do on defense to try and fix things. They brought some of the ball pressure that you talked about from guys like Holland and Isaiah Johnson as they were the force. Let's see how many turnovers in total. They were the force 11 turnovers, but 8 of those came in the first half. So
Yeah.
they had the energy to start. But um, I mean, I guess before we look at the defense as a whole, you look at the interior. We talked about BD, some of his struggles. We talked about Elijah Malone, some of his struggles, but how he was able to help on the defense on the rebounding side of things. We didn't see, I'm talking a lot, but we didn't. We only saw Fawaz Tagovailoa for a few minutes. We
Yeah.
didn't see any Alone Mikaeli. We didn't see Leonardo Van Ellswick. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think it was kind of an interesting decision, Oliver Hayes, especially with the fact that this is a Big Sky opponent, and you kind of thought it would be a nicer segue to kind of get some of these guys like Taco in there to get some minutes to get some practice. But I think Tad Boy really wanted to count on his guys who've been there, right? And I think a lot of pressure was put on Sebastian Ranchik. You talked about him being on McMahon. He was having some tough goes. He was really playing both ways and having to give it his all. And I think that kind of stemmed into some of the ability as well. He's got a hurt ankle, right? It's game one. They're still trying to figure that aspect of it out.
Yeah, no, and it'll be interesting to see Ranchik step up because I think he's a guy who has the two-way ability. He
Yeah.
reminds me a lot of the versatile wings who can not only score the ball, but at 6'11" and being as athletic as he is, as lanky as he is, can look to shut down some of the opposing team's best players. But when it comes to look at the inside, I definitely thought Alone Mikaeli, he was a guy who I thought was going to be a
Yeah.
sure player today, given what we've seen in this preseason. Even though he's a late addition, but 0 minutes from him. But then on the flip side, I'd have been talking about Taco all off season, talk about how the energy that he's going to bring in the preseason. We didn't see much from him. I was afraid he wasn't going to be ready at all, but then he comes in, is able to get 2 rebounds and bring some of the energy. So I mean, I kind of just leave this game with question marks surrounding the interior. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, what else do you have to say about
No, I do want to talk about Olo Mike Kelly as well because I mentioned him pregame as kind of one of the players I was actually expecting to come out and make a difference, especially when you talk about his frame. But one thing that kind of interested me was Colorado going to that small ball lineup. They had Bengot Dag playing the center and kind of utilized their skillful guards. That's going to be interesting, Oliver Hayes, because while that was great for offense, defensively it really left a weakness for Colorado. So I think they're going to have to look at that. They're going to go back and watch the film, and I think Tad Boyle is going to see that potentially places where they could sub in some bigger packages and try to be a little more strengthful on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right with that because while there's the offensive upside with the double point guard lineup or even just some of the small ball lineups, there are the defensive struggles. And Tad talked about how the guard rebounding was not solid. Montana State
Yeah.
was crashing 5 guys to the glass on each possession.
Got
And, while the Buffs won the rebound battle, they didn't win it by 8, which has been one of their game goals since Tad Boyle has gotten here. And it's part of the reason why they were able to create extra possessions and shoot over 50% from the field. So across the board, not only does it come to the potential of more depth in the front court, but it comes down to what the guards can do beyond just ball pressure. It comes down to what they can do off the ball. It comes down to when that shot goes up, can they box out while still being able to
Definitely.
get the outlet and push the pace that the Buffs want to do, especially if the ball does happen to fall in and they want to get the ball in out of bounds and get the ball inbounded. But I feel like we've talked about a decent amount of things. I guess one thing tonight, before we look ahead to the Eastern Washington game that's coming on 2 p.m. on Saturday, the Buffs they only shot 3 of 12 from 3 tonight. I didn't think that was something that was going to happen after we saw 7+ guys hit threes in Australia and these preseason exhibitions, stuff like that. What do you have to take away from that shooting statistic?
Yeah, part of me wants to kind of attribute it to first game jitters a little bit, Oliver Hayes, because it's definitely not the shooting that we've been seeing in practice or like you talked about in that Australia trip. And I think part of it's just getting used to in-game action. It's a lot different when you have someone coming at you full speed, hand in your face, and you got the Dwayne Wade here on the sideline watching you, and it's just a whole lot of environment, different things like that. And I think just as a whole, Colorado could do a little bit better job of getting more cleaner looks. I think they got to set up shots just a little bit better in that aspect and not rely so much on kind of guys' own skill to create, that separation and movement, which they did a good job of though tonight. But I think that was kind of what I thought, Oliver.
Yeah, I think one thing was the fact that they only shot 12 threes. They didn't take too many, and a lot of that was just with the fact that I think Colorado recognized a little bit of the height difference that they had, even though Montana State's interior had a solid game tonight. And I think that was just shown with the amount of fouls that were drawn, specifically by Isaiah Johnson, Sebastian Ranchik, Elijah Malone. Those guys drew 6+ fouls each. But in total, the Buffs shot 39 free throws, and it was only the shooting aspect that that showed in the 3-point shooting that kind of hurt them when it came to the charity stripe. Excuse me, as they only made 27 of those 39 free throws. But looking at another statistic, the turnovers. I mean, we've talked about the guard play a bunch.
Yes.
We've talked about the pace of play. We've talked about the offense a ton. Sub 10 turnovers. What do you have to think about that real quickly, especially when you asked Tad Boyle, what was the difference between this year's team and last year's team when it came down to close games?
Yeah, he said it was the guard play, Oliver Hayes, that ability to maintain the ball. Not only that, be smart with it. They're not trying to force anything or trying to do too much. I think, part of the team last year, everyone was kind of trying to be Superman and everyone thought they needed to do everything. But this kind of team seems to be more accepting and playing their roles and understanding that, Barrington is going to be that primary ball handler. Kind of let him do his thing, let the offense work off that. And I think overall it gelled pretty well.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And being able to take care of the ball just created so many more extra looks at the rim.
Yes.
There were times last year where the Buffs were, felt a little bit like Montana State did in the first half, because the Bobcats were shooting the ball well, but they had 8 first half turnovers,
Yeah.
and they just simply weren't able to generate the looks that they were capitalizing on. So to see Colorado get those extra looks while they weren't able to shoot as well from three, they really shoot over 50% from the field themselves, and capitalize on those looks, which was good to see. But we've been talking for quite a bit after the season opener. There's not quite a full week, but some days until Saturday rolls around and the Eastern Washington Eagles come to town. They were voted tied 5th with Montana State in the Big Sky preseason coaches poll. What do the Buffs need to do? I mean, we don't know much about Eastern Washington, but what do the Buffs need to do with this handful of days before Saturday rolls around?
Yeah, they got to go back, look at the film, Oliver, see where they messed up defensively. I think that's going to be the biggest area that Colorado's going to have to focus on. Where were they, messing up position-wise? How were they allowing little guards to drive on them so effectively? I think when they look at that, they're able to clear it up. And some lineup things as well, Oliver. I think you do need to see more guys obviously see the court, and I think that's going to be able to help them figure out which people are going to be, better suited for those positions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that not next week's, but Saturday's game is a little bit more out of reach
Yeah.
from a basketball fan standpoint. That kind of sucks because I like the energy that was showcased tonight. But oh my, well, I don't know if that was recorded because there was a little 20% battery that popped up right there. But I was just about to say that I hope that it hurts me from a basketball fan standpoint when there isn't a close game. I want to see the close game. The energy that was shown tonight in the CU Event Center, the crowd was a lot better than I would have expected. But if a blowout is able to occur, the Buffs are able to expand, one way or the other. Hopefully, getting the lead against the Eagles.
Yes.
They can test some of those situations, or test some of those rotations, test some of those lineups. I know that Tad Boyle mentioned 2 potential redshirt candidates. Didn't name drop anybody, but said a freshman and a sophomore. That sophomore, all the sophomores that played today, or excuse me, only one sophomore that played today, and that was John Manny. So, you'd have to expect him to potentially be in the mix for redshirt.
Yeah.
You have to look at, I wouldn't expect alone Mikaeli to be the redshirt, so I'd have to guess Leonardo Van Elswick. But I'm kind of talking off base. But basically, the Buffs are gonna hope to expand on their rotations, their lineups, their situations next game against the Eagles. But that will only come with a solid level, a solid week of preparation, as Tad has talked about how leading up to the season opener, teams don't rise to the level; they fall to the level of preparation. So, you've seen practice a few times, maybe not as much as me, but what do you think the Buffs can do in practice to help better themselves beyond just trying to hope that they can test out some more situations against the Eagles?
It's listening. That's the number one thing Tad Boyle talks about. It's a skill, right? Coach Boyle's kind of echoed this whole defensive first mentality, and he says it's still kind of not sticking with the guys yet. They just got to listen to him, and once they figure out, I think that'll help get the ball rolling.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so, just because this group is so young, and at times it is hard to listen.
Yeah.
When you're 18, 19 years old, and there's a guy who's
60.
62 years old, 40 years your senior. That's, it makes it tough sometimes. But at the same time, it is helpful when you look at the coaching staff, and there's Evan Batty, who graduated us
For
just a
sure.
few years ago, who played against Montana State in the 2021-22 season opener, who can help, be like, hey, this Tad guy knows a little bit about what he's talking about.
For
So,
sure.
um, you know, hopefully we can see the Buffs, find a little bit more cohesion in this next week, and produce a little bit of a better quality product, at least on the defensive end. But Leo, before we sign off from this, the first in the heyday episode of the official college basketball
Yes.
season, do you have any more thoughts?
Yeah, I think the CU EC did a pretty good job tonight of filling in the stands, Oliver Hayes. But I think Tad Boyle mentioned it. You just want to see more. You want to continue to see this thing pack up, and I think there's gonna be some exciting basketball games this season.
I think so too, because I think there would definitely be some woes with this young group, especially on this defensive end.
Yes.
How this interior comes together, whether it's depth, whether it's rotation, whatever it is, how they come together will definitely be something to be seen. But tonight, if it is only Isaiah Johnson that leads the Buffs, that will be one exciting thing. But there was some more, much more exciting stuff, whether it's Sebastian Rancic getting up, hitting a few shots, getting to the line, Elijah Malone looking a little bit better himself, Bangot Dak rising up for one of the best pushes of his career. There are many things to look forward to, even though this was a 6-point ball game against a mid-major opponent. But I already gave you the chance to, give your final thoughts. I'm pretty tired, as fans can probably tell. So this is probably a good point to wrap it up. My name is Oliver Hayes, alongside Leopoldo Rivera IV. I appreciate you guys listening to another episode of In the Heyday.